Hello, my name is Sarah, and this is How I Heal. I record the voice separately from recording the movement whenever I do these, and this video I found was done a couple months ago. It's been some time since I've done this movement, but it did make me think back to when I did this movement, what I was experiencing at the time. I was just coming out of a sedentary spell with little movement, very little movement, or at least very little intentional movement. I would do things. I would do things around the house, go out into town and get things done. But I didn't have mindful, intentional movement. So my alignment was really challenging for me to get into. Like even just watching myself here, warming up this squat posture that I wanted to be in and I wanted to feel my hips in. It was work, moving my feet around, adjusting my legs, rotating my hips. It took a lot for me to find that optimal, healthy alignment feeling. Here, I was doing some overhead squats because of the work that it takes in the upper back. It takes a lot of control and attention to keep your back in alignment to do an overhead squat here. So I was doing these things first because I wanted to set that alignment for myself, set my alignment in the hips for sitting and standing. And that stick that I have, that makes the arms really stable because your hands can't move. And it's really lightweight, so it's not adding any resistance. But it's just helping me keep my shoulders stable because I can't move my hands around. That's why I like to use it, to bring it in. And because it's impossible to do that stretch with it going behind the back without it. You can use a strap or a resistance band, but I find it to be much more effective using a solid prop, like a stick, broom handle, Swiffer handle, PVC pipe. Any of those things work. So here what my focus is I'm trying to keep my spine in alignment without letting my chest stick too far forward as I go down into that squat. And then as I'm pulling the stick down and lowering it down with the elbows coming out to the sides, I want to feel my lats fire. Even though there's not any weight on top of my arms, I still want to be able to feel them fire as I bring my arms down and closer to the sides of my body. The lats are a big muscle in the back, but they wrap around to the outsides of the body. So when you're coming down from an overhead reach, you can really get some good support from your mid-back if you can get a connection with your lats and have them fire as you do that. Now there you can see I was really able to focus on adjusting my back and not letting my chest stick out too far. This work was also really slow. I wanted to take time once I got to the bottom and the top of movements because I wanted to check in and see where my body was going in and out of that posture. Did it stay in alignment? Did it come out of alignment? Where was it coming out of alignment? What muscles can I engage to help myself stay in alignment next time? So that's why this movement is so slow, because I'm really just checking in and getting to know where my body is at this point. All of this movement that I was doing back then has led me to where I am now. And now I have a good daily practice. I'm a personal trainer, fitness, nutrition, and wellness coach. And I had a client a couple years back, and she was having a hard time being motivated. And one thing that she started doing was walking for 30 minutes every morning, no matter what happened. She'd be like, man, it was raining this morning. My walk was in the rain. And even if we trained on those days, she still did a 30-minute walk. It was the first thing that she did for the day. And as I was coming into my own routine now, coming out of that sedentary spell and bringing movement back into my life, I was really inspired by that. Because for me, if I don't get movement in the morning, first thing, it may not happen because I'll get distracted and I have so many things that I want to get done. My brain goes into doing mode, and then it's like task seeking. Which tasks can I complete? And for some reason, a movement flow was not included in those tasks within my brain. So, getting up every morning, I consider it to be a meditation for my body. I set the intention for the day, for how I want to operate within my body throughout the day. What kind of posture do I want to hold on to? What is my resting posture going to look like? What is my standing posture going to look like? What am I going to do in between those resting and standing postures to keep my body healthy? I really like working also with the solid stick, going into these shoulder stretches. The day I was doing this, I was moving really slow through it, finding where the stickiest points were and just trying to steadily move through them, give myself movement through it. Finding those positions without making a big change into my body, letting the shoulders take the movement, letting my shoulders be where the range of motion is coming from, not my spine or my hips or my knees. So I really focused on standing tall while moving this stick from the front to the back of my body and getting in that really big rotation for the shoulders. When you bring the stick behind and to the low back, you're really getting an opening through the front of the shoulders and the top of the chest there. Here I started playing around with squatting with the arms in that back position, just to see what I would do with my alignment there. And you can notice what I'm feeling. You can see that I'm feeling some things happening in the spine there. So now I'm just playing around with this. And I use the word playing around because I try to come into this with curiosity. What will it feel like if I do this? How do my joints respond if I move this way? Instead of, this has to look a certain way, I'm like, well, what can it look like? What can it feel like? Trying to have that curiosity through the movement as I'm doing it. And one thing that does, it keeps me interested, for one, and it really builds the trust relationship between my body and my brain. Because I'm trying to do this gently, slowly, not forcing anything, listening to the feedback that my body's giving me. So if I get into a place where it doesn't feel good, I can change my posture slightly, make an adjustment, and not force my body in or out of something. A lot of this movement here really is just focusing on the stabilizing muscles that will hold a posture for me, trying to re-engage them, because I didn't spend much time intentionally moving my body. One side of my body, the right side, feels completely different than the left side. So a lot of this work that I'm doing here too is just trying to make it feel a little more even. I'm not trying to completely change it, because I know that can't be done in one session, in one movement, but I'm just trying to find a way to make the imbalance feel a little less intense. Can I feel my weight evenly through the right and the left foot? That's another thing I like to focus on once I get to the bottom of a squat. Once I get down there, do I have more weight on the right leg? Do I have more weight on the left leg? So that's another thing that I'm checking in for. And another reason I take so much time into these movements here, as I'm really starting a new movement routine for myself. I'm not coming in trying to do all of the things, trying to do as many as possible. My concern was not like, did I do enough reps? My concern was, did I do this enough times for my muscles to get to do it in the healthiest way that my body is capable of? Did I do it enough times in that healthiest way that my muscles can remember it, that my brain can remember the messages that it sent to the muscles to hold that healthier posture? That's really all I'm looking for. Was this movement challenging when I first started? Can I work to a point where it has more ease, where I feel more ease going through the movement? Instead of, oh, did I make it to 10 or 12? The number really isn't important, especially if you're just trying to begin a new connection with your body. If you're trying to figure out where you are because you don't know, because it may have been a while, that's the kind of mindset that I was in. Figuring it out. No expectations, more just listening, observing. Not trying to change it in that I'm trying to end it today, but I'm trying to gradually grow out of it. Meaning I also have to accept where I am. I have to accept that position that I'm in so that I can grow from there. So that's what I mean by not changing it. The goal is to be different, but I'm not forcing change. And here I'm resetting the hips anytime I feel like they've come out of it. My right hip likes to rotate back and up so it can get really sticky. It's the best way for me to describe it. Or it doesn't want to quite come into a neutral position. I love this rotational pull with the stick here, but I tried to be really focused when I did it. I wanted to pull only through one arm. So the arm that came up and around the head, that's the arm that pulled for me. The other arm, I tried to leave it inactive. Now just taking some more opening up through the front of the shoulders by bringing that stick behind. And breathing into that. The breath is so important for relaxation. The vagal nerve runs down the neck. It's a big nerve, and it is stimulated by a slow, controlled exhale. And the vagal nerve being stimulated, or the vagus nerve being stimulated, sends a message to the heart to slow the heart rate down, helping the body relax. So anytime you hear someone directing you to breathe while you're moving, it's because that breath really does affect how your body responds to what you're doing. So make sure you're always utilizing breath. That was a big focus for me here. Switching it up now. Moving down to the ground. Working on some hip mobility strength. This is the Dr. Jacob exercise that I loved. I kept this one in the rotation for a good month, making sure I did it several times a week. What I noticed was the muscles towards the outside of my hip, the hip joint, they were sleepy. They didn't want to come on. And this was the one movement that targeted them specifically and effectively to come on and really help my hip posture become healthy with ease. You know, where I am today with my hips is not the same as where I was the day that I recorded this. And this exercise right here was a big help in getting me to where I am today, because it really targeted those rotating muscles that help hold external rotation in the hips. External rotation in the hips opens the hips. External rotation means the front of the leg turns towards the outside a little bit. And that external rotation helps keep the hips in a neutral position, centered in the body, centered over the feet, with the rib cage directly over it, instead of having the rib cage in front of your hips with that leaning forward posture. That leaning forward posture and bringing the chest out in front of the hips can cause a lot of tension for the low back. And it can start to cause tension in the low neck and the shoulders as well, because the head, the chin, will start to come forward. And as the chin starts to come forward, it makes the head feel heavier on the top of the body, causing tension in the neck and shoulders. And all of this can be helped all the way up to the neck. We're talking here. I started off talking about my hips, and now I'm talking about neck and shoulders and chin, because they're linked. The whole body is connected. The bones are there, but if we didn't have the tendons, the muscles, and the ligaments all holding themselves together, we would be a pile of bones on the floor. And we're connected through fascia with the muscles, another layer on top of the muscles, connecting them and holding them together. So tension in one area of the body can then pull on the fascia, which will pull in a different area of the body. So for me, not being able to have this external rotation in the hips so easily, it causes me to have a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt, meaning my pelvic bone tips forward, meaning my lumbar spine, the low back, gets a bigger sway in it. And then my chest can also start to come forward. My thoracic spine, the part of the spine that attaches to ribs, starts to come forward a little bit, and we change our shape. We make the sway of our back even bigger, making different muscles have to tighten that wouldn't normally have to tighten if we could change the alignment that we're standing in. So that lovely exercise that I was just doing helps those external rotators in the hips. So here I'm switching into a low side plank, trying to find a healthy shoulder alignment before I start moving. Today I was really focused on alignment, so I took a lot of time before I started moving to make sure that I was trying to hold my posture as healthy as possible. And with this side plank, the bottom leg is bent so that I can push through the knee, and the foot's coming behind me, and the top leg is straight. I push through the knee and lift the top leg, and that's going to activate the gluteus medius on both sides of my body. Those glute muscles are also external rotators. I like to call them the side butt. You've got your big glute muscles that make up the butt cheeks. And then underneath that and to the side, there's a smaller muscle, the gluteus medius. And that muscle helps turn the leg out. Like I was talking about earlier, the front of the leg starting to face towards the side. That creates external rotation in the hip, keeping the hip stable, open, and centered. And so I paired this star plank with that Dr. Jacob exercise, so I could really focus on strengthening the external rotators for the hips. Taking a little stretch here, not moving too fast into the other side. Just noticing what's going on there in the hips with that external rotation, internal rotation. Right leg externally rotating here. coming to the hands and knees position. Just resetting from a more stable position. Both knees are on the ground, so I can't move the hips too much. A little less range of motion than, if I were standing up. Hi, Diamond. Diamond wants to be in the audio too. She said, I made it to the video. Please put me in the audio. So there's our little Diamond. Diamond the tabby girl. Taking some rotational circles here, moving from one side to the other. Just trying to feel that I can get my body to feel like it's operating a little more evenly from side to side. Feel like the left is similar to the right. Not exactly the same, but making sure that I don't have too much work on one side of the body from the other. And also just taking some time to reset that left to right stability there before I move over to the other side. And the reason that I took so much time before going from one movement to the other was because I didn't want to just flip over to the other side and start. I wanted to make sure that I set my alignment before I started moving on that other side. Not just going from the right side into the left side. Because as I said, my sides operate differently, one side from the other. And there I was just doing a nice lat stretch. It's one of my favorite stretches from the hands and knees position. You take the pinky edge side of one hand and put it out in front of the opposite hand's middle fingers. Keep that arm long and sit back, mimicking more of a child's pose. And I like to go in and out of this one to let the muscle stretch and then come back. Stretch and then come back. That active stretch seems to be pretty effective, especially if it feels a little tighter than usual. I like to come in and out of it as opposed to just holding it, especially when I feel a lot of tension. If I feel a lot of tension holding the stretch, maybe too much to start with. So if I can give myself some dynamic movement to start, I typically feel the tension release. Opening up through the shoulders here, trying to get the arms really long in that child's pose, and then letting the hands press down into the ground as I try to bring my chest as close to my thighs as possible. Now I'm going to set up for the other side plank. Try to have a similar setup from the other side, aligning my hips so that they're stacked on top of each other. The right hip is right on top of the left hip here. I don't want it to droop behind. If I let the top hip droop behind, I'll start to use my lower back muscles instead of the muscles along the side of my core. And here I really want to engage the muscles along the side of my core, and I also want to make sure that I'm engaging my gluteus medius, those external rotators in the butt. Lining the hips, making sure they can stack, and then beginning the movement. Now with these, if a leg lift at the top is too challenging, leave the foot on the ground, leave that top foot on the ground, and just press up through that bottom knee, and you'll get more work on one side than the other. But when you do the other side, that other glute med will get the same work that it did. This leg lift is a way of activating both sides at the same time, but it can be a challenge. So if you're just starting out, you may just want to keep it to the press up to start and not take it into that leg lift at the top. So again, I'm just moving around here, playing around with moving my body, finding some extension in the hip, coming back into that seated position. Because as I said, I was starting, even though I've been doing this, I've been in the fitness world since 2010. I was, this was new for me. I was starting something new. I needed to know where I was. So even for someone that has had a regular fitness routine, when you've dropped off and you're coming back, a slow, gentle start can do a lot for you. It can let you know where your body really is. Then your body can tell you which movements it needs the most to strengthen, instead of just going onto the internet, seeing what someone else did and be like, oh, okay, I'll do that. But is that what my body needs? So through these sessions that I was doing here, these movement sessions here, with slow and controlled movement based on alignment, focusing on how can I get my spine in alignment, how can I get my hips in alignment, how can I get my shoulders in alignment, my ankles. That kind of movement led me to the place where I am now, to where I can get up every morning and say, okay, today I need some lunges, I need some chest work, or I can be like, oh, I really need to use some back, I need to pull. Now I can use equipment, add resistance bands, add weight to it. Because my posture, it's easier for me to get into a healthy posture now. It flows better because I practiced more. Plank to down dog is one of my favorite tools to align my hips and to strengthen that alignment. It is also really good for shoulder alignment too. But whenever I need to strengthen the muscles that help me align my hips when I'm standing, I try to go to plank to down dog. So here in this down dog, you get the stretch, and then coming into the plank, you get the hip extension, you get the abs coming on. You have to pull the belly away from the floor. In the back of the body, you want to gently pull down with the shoulder blade so that the lats are firing, even in that plank, gently firing. In the down dog, for the hands, making sure that I have weight on the pinky edge side of my hand. That means I'm externally rotating my arms. The shoulders externally and internally rotate, just like the hips do. And that external rotation helps me keep my shoulders open and stable from more angles than just the front part of my shoulder. Many of us, whenever we're getting tired, it's the front part of the shoulder that's getting tired because it's been taking all of the work. Well, the shoulder goes all the way around. We don't need to put everything into the front of our shoulders. So by externally rotating the arms, you can recruit muscles that are below the shoulder blades, underneath the armpit, wrapping around the outside of the body there, just underneath the armpit. All of those muscles play into the support within the shoulders. So if we're putting everything into our front shoulders for support, we're really using an inefficient support system there, because there's so much more that can be recruited to get that done. A high plank is a really great posture to practice total body alignment, because you can gently rotate out through the legs, feel that happen down through the toes. The heels are up towards the ceiling, toes are on the ground. And then you flatten the back, really extend the hips and push them into a straight position, rotating out with the arms. And breathing into that position will really help strengthen a standing posture. Switching it up again. Right now I'm stretching the hip flexor of the back leg. Hip flexors are at the top of the thigh on the front side. They're what help you flex your hip, meaning you bring your thigh closer to your chest. When your hip is extended, it's straight in the front. The front of your hip is very straight. But when the hip is bent and the top of the thigh comes closer to the chest or closer to the torso, your hip is flexed, and that hip flexor should be on. It doesn't always have to be. There are ways that the body can move and work around it, but when the hip flexes, we want those hip flexors to fire. Right now, I'm trying to bring my hips back over the back knee, and then I'm going to fold forward from there. The front leg is now stretching the back of the front leg. Coming forward, bending that front knee, stretching the back hip flexor, pushing the hips forward, pushing down into the top of the back foot. And I like to go in and out of that. Sometimes I change the angle from right to left. Now I'm stretching the front legs, hamstring, the back of the calf. I like to pull my toes up towards the ceiling as I do that. Clearly on this day, my hip flexor was tighter than my hamstring for this side of the body. Switching to the other side of the body. Starting off in the half split here, because that helps me know where my foot needs to be. How far back, how far forward does it need to be? And I changed my posture in these movements when I feel that I'm tight in a different spot from one leg to the other. So one side I might have tension on the right, and the opposite side, or let me rephrase that. Like, let's say on the right side, I have external tension, more towards the outside of my right leg. But on the left side, I have internal tension, more towards the inside of my leg. So sometimes I might take the same stretch at a little different angle. I may move my body, my shoulders over to the right or the left, so that I can help stretch the area with more tension from one side to the other. Always just trying to get the two sides to feel a little more similar, knowing that they won't be exactly the same. At least not for me anytime soon. I think a lot of my imbalances from right to left started when I was really young. I had my toe, I believe it was broken, but I was refused medical attention, so I never got to know. And it was painful for quite some time. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I had asked many times to go to the doctor, and I just kept being told there was nothing they could do about it. There's nothing they'll do. There's nothing they can do. So I just had to suffer through it, until it was not painful anymore. But as I got into my adult life, and then I got into corrective exercise, and I got into healing myself emotionally, matching that with physically, I could see the connection from how that would start a chain reaction all the way up my right side. My right hip sits up and back. Well, what kind of pain was I trying to avoid in my foot? So what did I do differently on the right side to make that change? Something in the hip. My right shoulder likes to come down and forward. Well, if my right hip is always going back and up, it makes sense that the top of my body is going to have to compensate in some sort of way, and I can't change the chain reaction that has happened, but now, just understanding how it's affected me over my life, over the decades, it lets me understand too that I'm going to have to give some attention to my feet. I've started trying to change how I operate with my feet and putting some intention behind that instead of just letting them take all of the weight with no support, just sitting it on top of them. trying to let my feet become more active and more supportive and more stable, so that a lot of what I'm trying to change with the imbalances will hold better, will remain longer. This is a quad stretch. The quad is the front part of the thigh. It's 4 muscles come together, so that's why they call them quads. But that's a really good way to stretch your quads. If you have your quads that get really tight, that can cause tension in the knee, in certain areas of the knee. So keeping them nice and flexible, nice and loose, instead of extra tense, very helpful. So now I'm going to make my way into some stretches first I'm going to stretch the other side, but then I'm going to make my way into some lunges. First, I get my feet set for where I want my lunge to be. What's a good distance there? And then what I did is I put that block at the bottom or underneath me so that the bottom of my lunge is just a bit above the floor. It's not quite to the ground. And I'm trying to, by having my hands on my hips, I'm trying to help feel that alignment is even from right to left. Not letting one hip go backward while the other one stays forward. Trying to get my weight into my front leg, using the front leg to lower me down, and then using the front leg to push me back up. The back leg is there for support, so I do have some weight in that back leg, but I'm trying to make sure that I have a significant amount of weight centered over the front leg. Now getting a quad stretch for the left side. Moving my arms around just to play around with the alignment and the stability within my core. Breathing as I'm doing this. Diamond relaxing as I'm doing this. She's just chilling down there. She's an indoor cat who likes fresh air. Using that front leg, trying to get the front leg extended as much as possible, bending both knees to come down. I like to use this solid stick because it keeps my arms in the same position. So here, as I'm rotating over that front leg in that lunge, I'm rotating through my torso with my thoracic spine because I'm trying to keep my hips steady from right to left, so my hips can't do the turning for me. But now you can see that my torso, that's where the twisting and the rotating is happening. I'm taking these lunges really slow so that I can feel that front leg is doing the work, stabilizing, supporting, strong, and lifting me up. Really maintaining that hip posture from right to left. Twisting over the front leg so that I can't use my hips to help me get this twist in. When you're in a split position like this with your legs, if you twist over the back leg, your back hip can rotate backwards, helping you twist further. But if you twist over the front leg, it keeps your hips a little more stable so that it's harder for them to twist. And then you can really twist from the thoracic spine and from the torso. Keeping the weight in the front leg all the way up, not taking it into the back leg, all the way down, keeping weight in that front leg. And I'm moving really, really slow. So time under tension is making this work feel like it's weighted. It feels like I've got a lot of resistance added because I'm taking the time under tension and extending it by moving slower. Another good benefit of using a stick, it really does work to roll out the muscles if you've let the tension get build up to where it's pretty strong. So you can use that stick to roll out the muscles depending on what you got going on. Aligning the hips from left to right as I lower myself down. Really pulling through the midsection of the body towards the outside to rotate myself. Pushing all the way through into that leg. Now, as I'm staying straight in my leg, I'm not locking out that front knee. You can see it easily bends. But I'm just trying to get it to straight, but I'm not pushing back with my knee. Moving in and out of this slowly, feeling the muscles adjust through the different shapes of this movement, at the different sections of the posture. Trying to feel my body come together as a whole to support this movement. The majority of the work is coming from the legs and then also from the obliques once I get into twisting, coming into the lat a little bit. Serratus anterior as well, that muscle along the outside of the body underneath the armpit. All really important muscles for posture, keeping the shoulder blades flat against the back. Here, I'm working with my feet. My feet are having a hard time holding that. So I'm just trying to reset so I can feel that the muscles in my feet are also active. My feet had been ignored by me for quite some time. So within the last year or so, just trying to really pay attention for posture in the feet, alignment in the feet as well. I've got some cramping going on, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of stretching now on the block. Sometimes that happens, and you have to listen to your body. Otherwise, it'll keep happening. So give it a little stretch. See if you can get the tension to come down and relax a little bit. And if you can, you try it again. And maybe it will work. Sometimes it doesn't. You just got to listen to your body. Let your body be your guide. It's all about mindful movement, being aware of what's going on inside the body instead of ignoring what's going on in the body and checking out of the body, dissociating from the body. I had a childhood trauma experience. Well, I should say my childhood was a trauma experience. So I have a very strong dissociation tool. It's a survival mechanism, but my body goes into it even when I'm not in survival mode. So it takes a lot of focus for me to stay in my body, to stay connected to the movement of my body and to be aware of what's going on in my body. For a long time, being aware of what's going on in my body created a level of anxiety. But through practice and time and connection to breath, I've been able to alleviate that in many ways, on many levels. Diamond 2 has really reset her nervous system. Anytime you see like a former street cat stretch out like that and show their belly and get on their back, it's like it just lightens your mood because you know how much stress they were under themselves. Like they were so anxious all the time. So to be able to see a little baby relax like that, It's good. She's doing the work too. Rotating over the front leg so that I have more hip stability there, and I can really practice twisting from the core, not twisting from the hips. Although the hips are part of the core. Nice and slow here. I'm only doing one set of all of these things. I'm not going in for multiple sets. I'm just taking my time and working with these movements for minutes at a time. You know, before switching, letting the muscles get tired, and then moving on. Always readjusting the posture, trying to always adjust it back into the healthiest alignment possible. Small micro adjustments. And that's a lot of work for the body. It's a lot of work for the brain too. It can feel tiring. So here, I'm aligning myself on the ground. I'm eventually going to go into some bridge here, and I'm using the block as a prop so that I can get engagement in my inner thighs as well as the glutes and the hamstrings, and a little bit of external rotating through the outside of the hips. So I'm really trying to get my hips to settle onto the floor. I don't want to have to press them down onto the floor, so I'm taking a lot of small movements here to try to relax my hips down to the ground, allowing my spine to make contact with the ground. So my lumbar spine will make contact, my mid-back should be in contact, and then I can start to press. And as I press, I'm holding that block, and I'm squeezing that block in. So I've got some engagement in the inner thigh as well. And that way, because sometimes whenever I do a bridge, I have this tendency to kind of just let my legs flop out to the outside and push that way. It's like, yeah, my butt's doing it. Yeah. But that's not fully supported, and it's not the most efficient way to move. It's better to get engagement 360 degrees around the thigh, especially at the top of the thigh towards the hips. If you can feel some work all the way around your leg, all the way around, 360 degrees around, better supported, more effective, and less work for any one muscle group because everything is firing just a little bit, you know. So my glutes, I'm trying to get my glutes to fire at 100%. I want the rest of my leg to be firing at 50% there and supporting. And I may not even want I want my glutes to fire at 85% and the rest of my legs to fire at 50%. You don't have to take it to 100 every time you do an exercise. You don't have to engage your muscle to the strongest capacity possible. You just want to engage it to where you feel that the tension is there, you can feel that the blood flow is there, you feel the work. But it doesn't have to be the absolute hardest work. It could be 85% hard. Which 85% hard for 5 minutes. At the end of the 5 minutes, it's going to feel more like 100. Again, taking my time through this movement so I can really feel which muscles are firing at the different stages of this exercise. Is everything coming on in the beginning, or am I missing something? So I take it slower so that I can make sure that I'm recruiting everywhere. Diamond found something she wanted. Now, another thing that I haven't mentioned here, so we talk about the core a lot. We talk about using the abs for support, pulling in with the front of the belly, tightening the front of the body. Well, I've got my elbows on the ground here for a reason, because I want to be able to gently press down into my elbows. That's going to make me fire my lats. Your lats are core support in the back side of the body. If you were to do a wide grip pull-up and pull yourself up, those are the muscles that you're really going to be recruiting. Well, they also help for support. They don't just pull. They don't only pull you up. They come on for support. They can help you have taller posture. They can help you keep your spine in alignment while you're standing. So whenever I put my elbows on the ground for this glute bridge, I'm trying to gently press back through the elbows so that I can also have core support from the lats. And for many people, that's a new idea whenever they're thinking of core support. So it's a good thing to explore from a position like this, where it's pretty easy to get the lats to fire. All you have to do is push down into your elbows. And again, you don't have to push at 100%. 50% is all you need for support. Holding my hips at the top, finding that hip extension in the front of the hips. Feeling all of those core muscles fire to help that happen. At the same time, trying to focus on 360-degree work through the thigh. Really focusing on once I come up into that bridge, when I come back down, can I get my entire back to come to the ground together instead of having to take the arch out of my low back and set it down? Can I keep my spine in that alignment as I go up and down? And once I come down to the floor, can I keep that alignment when I'm on the floor, allowing my spine to make its way down to the ground? Can I keep my lats firing while I'm here, just gently pressing down into them? And then switching it up again. I'm going to make my way onto my stomach here. I've got the stick again because it's going to keep my arms in one position. I'm not going to be able to move them from right to left because I'll be holding onto the stick as I'm doing this. Really using my breath here to relax myself onto the ground. Feel my hips extend in the front. Being able to do that from the ground, you can really relax into that position through breath. Every time you breathe out, try to send a relaxation signal through that vagus nerve to your body to relax. Working on that pull down. Just playing around with the rotation of my shoulders, the range of motion that they have. Trying to get my arms to come nice and high off of the ground whenever I lift them up. Breathing and setting. Before I raise my arms, I'm trying to relax my hips. So I'm going to relax my hips down to the floor, and then I want to use my upper body to bring that stick off of the ground. So I really want to focus on relax the lower body, let it stay on the ground, and then engage the upper body. What muscles can I recruit in the back of my body to raise this up and pull it back? Taking it nice and slow, feeling that out as it's happening. Using the muscles in the back of my body to lift my arms from the ground. And it takes a lot of mental focus to do that, especially if a different part of your body is used to firing to make that happen. Going for a bigger range of motion through movement for the arms here. And since that stick is light enough, just letting it hang on the back of my neck. With that pull down, trying to feel my shoulder blades. What are they doing there? Is there a direction that one is going that the other's not going? Can I keep them a little more even from right to left? Will tightening my ab muscles help? So I can relax the hips down to the floor, pull in with the belly, and then recruit those muscles in the back of the shoulders to lift the stick up and off of the floor. Relax the hips first, pull in with the belly, lift the stick. Relax, pull in, and lift. Hips extended, abs on. breathing the whole time I'm doing it, lifting and pulling. And again, for this work that I was doing, this movement that I was doing, my focus wasn't on how many times did I do each movement. My focus was on how can I recruit my body as one to make this kind of posture more effective. So I may have changed the movement for a couple of reps and then changed it back. It's really wanting to feel out for that. Here I'm going to get some engagement in the front of the body, trying to get into the chest, releasing the arms so that I'm resetting and really pushing, squeezing through the chest as I come up, trying to keep my hips into that full extension all the way up. I want my legs to come on, so I want to reach back through my heels, get my quads tight, try to lift myself all at the same time from the floor coming up. So I'm pushing down into my hands, pushing through my chest, pushing down into my feet, lifting the back of my legs up. Now, if these full plank push-ups are too challenging to knock out, the hand release really does help. My recommendation is come to this high plank and lower yourself all the way down to the floor. Then leave your knees on the ground to push yourself back up. And then once you get back up to the top, raise your knees, high plank, and lower yourself down from that high plank. Last little bit here, I really wanted to get into my lats. So I just took some time. I didn't want to go inside and get any more equipment. So I came back down to that, what would be a bridge position. And I held that bar in between my hands. And then I just pressed down into the ground for an extended amount of time, letting my lat come on and fire for an extended amount of time, working on the endurance of that muscle. A lot of times we just recruit these muscles for one little pull and then let it release. Pull and then release. But we don't pull and hold it back, where we work on the muscular endurance. How long can that muscle fire? So here I'm just testing out the muscular endurance for my lat before I end this movement session that I did. All of this today that I'm discussing that I had done on this day, this movement, was really just focused on connecting to the muscles in my body, making sure I can get them to fire in a way that's going to bring my body into the healthiest posture possible. So it's all about connecting to those muscles, seeing how I can make it fire. How hard can I fire that muscle? How long can I fire that muscle? Just testing it out. Where am I? That's what it's all about, right? Where am I today? Where am I right here, right now? What is it that I need in this moment? What is going to make my life feel more healthy in this moment? Or what is going to continue to make me feel healthy in this moment? Just working on a little bit of overhead reach there to lengthen the lat after firing it, stretching it by bringing the arms up and overhead after firing it. And that was all I did for that day. That's about an hour of movement. So if you've joined me, thank you for being here. See you next time.